Imagine this. You finally find the perfect Vancouver home. You've saved up for years, your offer gets accepted, and you buy the house. But 2 years later, you realize you bought at the peak of the market. Your equity is flat, or maybe it's even going backwards. Your mortgage feels like a trap, and this home, this perfect dream you thought, has now become a financial boat anchor. This is the reality for thousands of Vancouverites who bought their home but didn't understand the bigger picture. They didn't understand where they fit within the market cycle. Vancouver real estate is not just about granite countertops or rooftop patios, nor is it just the subject of dinner time conversation. Buying a home in Vancouver is expensive, and as a result of that, you really need to understand the market cycles. You need to understand the hidden costs of owning this home and how your decisions today will affect your life tomorrow, especially when it comes to your house. In this video, I'm going to break down the top 5 things that you really must understand before buying a home in Vancouver. And this isn't just having a good realtor or making sure you've got a home inspector lined up. That's the generic stuff you can find on YouTube. What we're going to do here is we're going to go a little deeper, looking at some market signals, things that'll actually help you understand where you are in today's cycle. The things you really want to pay attention to so that you can build some equity, so that you can get ahead in life. So whether you're a first-time home buyer, whether you're a move-up buyer, or whether you're a luxury home buyer, I have helped someone just like you, and I want to share the wisdom I've imparted on them with you today. So let's get into it. So I think it's super important that you understand where you sit within the market cycle. This is likely the biggest financial investment, biggest amount of money that you'll spend on yourself and on your family. And so understanding where you fit within this market cycle is hugely important, as important as it would be for understanding your lifestyle requirements and things like that. We'll get into that. But Vancouver's market is never static. It's never been static. It is cyclical. Historically, real estate here has followed waves of cycles, whether that's a boom cycle, a peak, a correction, and a recovery. For example, after the 2008 financial crisis, sales fell by nearly 40% and then rebounded within 2 years. In 2016, foreign buyers' taxes cooled the market almost overnight, leading to a mini correction before roaring back to life again. So smart buyers in this marketplace don't just ask, can I afford to buy this property? They are also asking, where am I entering in this current market cycle? Because if you buy at the top of the market cycle, you may face years of flat or declining equity. If you buy in the recovery part of the cycle, you can ride that upswing and you can make equity in as little as 2 to 5 years that would otherwise take somebody who bought at the peak of the market a decade. So while you can't necessarily time the market, you can certainly improve your odds. And here are some indicators to watch. First of all, you want to pay attention to the sales to active listings ratio. Historically, under 12% means that 12 out of every 100 homes are selling in the marketplace. This puts you in a buyer's marketplace. 12 to 20% will put you into a balanced marketplace. And anything over 20% for a sustained period of at least 3 months means you're operating in a seller's market. Now, if you're operating and you recognize that you're in a buyer's market, you've got the leverage. Load up your contract, ask for things that otherwise might be a little bit unreasonable, comparatively speaking, in a balanced or in a seller's market. Now, if you find yourself in a seller's market, the leverage is really going to come down to how nice is the home and whether or not you're having to deal with anyone else trying to buy the home. This really doesn't give leverage to one side or the other, but recognizes that the contract, the buyer, and the seller need to come together in order for a deal to come to place. If you find yourself in a seller's market, you might be capitulating on the terms and conditions within your contract. You might have to deal with the time frame that works more for the seller, and worse off, you may be competing against another buyer. Now, when we look at other indicators to tell whether or not we're buying in a good part of the market cycle, we want to pay attention to standing inventory. When inventory rises above 8 to 12 months, that's a good number. 8 to 10 months, prices typically soften. If you get to 12 months, things are looking pretty bad in the real estate market. Could be a really good time to buy. The one thing you'll typically notice with a lot of standing inventory is a lot of the inventory isn't really that great quality because smart sellers will sell in a seller's market. But sometimes people have to sell anyways. So paying attention in these markets is where you're going to find your deal. Next, you're going to want to pay attention to the Bank of Canada rate cuts. Historically, rate cuts tend to spark demand within about 6 to 12 months of the rate cut taking place. What's more is in a really slow market, you could see it take up to 6 full quarters. Nonetheless, 6 to 12 months is a good rule of thumb. Number 4, you want to pay close attention to population growth versus the amount of homes that are completing. If immigration is outpacing housing supply, that's going to create upward pressure. And conversely, the opposite if it's true. Now, if you're trying to figure out where to look for these things, I have all of that information readily available, but you can also go to things like ChatGPT and go into a large language model and have a look at these 4 items just to see where you fall within the market. The key here is it's impossible to time the market perfectly. No one can. But there's a big difference in understanding the noise versus the signals. What are those indicators versus what are opinions? Paying attention to news cycles, it's not going to help you. You're going to be too late. When it's picked up in the news, the market has already moved. So to understand where you fall, have a look at the market fundamentals. Know the difference between the signals and the noise, because this will tell you whether the wind is at your back or whether the wind is in your face. Next up, we're going to want to get pre-approved, but this time we're going to go a little deeper. Pre-approvals are essential, but here's the truth. It's not necessarily a guarantee. And your banks are competing for your business. The banks are going to look at today's income, your debts, and what the rates look like. But what if rates change? What if they go up? What if they go down? What if your job changes? Banks have the right to recheck everything before closing. Some are better than others with this, and others are more prudent. So really make sure you're working with a sound professional who can help you navigate this. If you're looking for a recommendation, I can help you with that too. The rule of thumb here is it's best to shop within about 85 to 90% of your max pre-approval. Why? Well, because life happens. And life will happen to you. It might not be something you choose to do. It can be a change in the economy, different political outcome, huge projects get announced, something to this effect that could change what you already know. And if that's the case and you're approved for $1 million property, you probably want to buy at $850 or $900K. That buffer will give you latitude to move in higher rate scenarios, maybe do a renovation if you end up with a leak or something. Or life will change. Also, it's important to shop around because in Vancouver, the prices of real estate are expensive. So even just a quarter point change in your rate can equal hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars over a term rate. So over 5 years, that could be the difference between $15,000 and $20,000 of saved income or not. All right, next, it's really important here that we talk a little bit about understanding what stage of life you're in and whether or not the future needs are relevant. While housing is largely a financial decision, it's not just a financial decision. It's also very much a lifestyle decision. Too many people buy for what they need today, and they don't consider what their future self is going to need. They buy a trendy 1-bedroom condo or a 1-bed and den with a cool loft space instead of actually getting the 2nd bedroom that they knew they would need in the future. And so then in 3 years, they realize they've outgrown it, and the transaction costs are what are going to eat away at the equity that they might have made. So remember, every time you sell, you're going to lose about 3% to commissions. You're going to lose to property transfer tax when you buy your next home. You might even have to pay GST if the property is new. That could be $50,000 to $100,000 of sunk costs, potentially more depending on what you're buying. And that would get burned just because you didn't make the right decision earlier on. The rule of thumb here is buy the home you can see yourself in for the next 5 to 7 years. Vancouver's carrying costs and transaction fees are expensive because so is the property. So short-term flips, they don't always work because the sunk costs are tremendous. Unless, of course, you're an investor with a different risk profile or a different financial setup. Next, I want to look at the true cost of ownership. Most buyers think If I can afford to cover the mortgage, I'll be fine. But that's really only half of the story. In Vancouver, you typically have strata fees, you've got insurance, you've got property taxes, you're going to have maintenance fees, you might even have special levies, annual general meetings where budgets can increase. This can add 30 to 40% on top of your mortgage costs. You're going to want to make sure that you have that in mind. What's more, mortgages are not flat. The banks understand the game they're playing. Mortgages, the one you're going to get, is weighted. So, in the first 5 to 10 years, the majority of your payment goes to interest, not servicing principal. That means building equity is slow at the start and faster at the end. Now, you do have some options here. You can do a prepayment on your mortgage, and if you can do that every year, most banks allow up to a certain percentage. If you take advantage of that, you will pay down 100% of that payment will be towards your principal. So the more you can do that, the faster you'll eat away at your mortgage. Another important part of recognizing making these smaller flips and incremental gains is that every time you buy a new property, if you trade it within 3 years as an example, you've also reset your mortgage. So while if you were 5 years into owning your property and now you're paying down a certain portion of your principal, if you go buy a brand new property, you start that clock all over again and you go back to year one on your amortization schedule paying almost all interest. So you got to really think and ask yourself if that's worth it. This is why buying at the right stage of the cycle matters so much, because it can either amplify the cushion that you have or intensify the interest costs that you're paying. Either way, you got to know if it's worth it or not. Another piece to this is your home should ideally appreciate faster than the interest costs of owning it. Let me explain. If your mortgage costs you $30,000 a year in interest and your home is appreciating by $50,000 a year, well, then you're ahead. It's looking pretty good and it makes sense to own that home. But if the appreciation begins to lag, if it only goes up 1 or 2%, the cost of interest is going up at a higher rate or it's just not balancing, then you need to ask whether or not holding on to that home makes sense or whether or not the market cycle is going to come back to rebalance the equation that you currently have. If it doesn't, you're going to want to make that move sooner than later because those interest costs can kill you. Let's turn our attention to the community, livability, and what it means for a strategic resale. This is one of the hidden factors. You're not just buying a home, you're buying into the community that you're going to live in as well. So you're going to want to make sure it has the amenities that are going to service your needs. Look for areas with growth potential, upcoming transit stations like a light rapid transit station or a SkyTrain station, something to that effect. Take a look at rezoning for multiplexes. Have a look at the OCP plans. What is actually called for this area? What does the future development look like here? Some of these areas have been huge appreciation drivers in Vancouver, but it pays to know where they are because the resale of your property matters. How you buy your property is how you make your money, not when you go to sell. Homes on busy streets with awkward layouts, poor natural light, those that were rushed to market because they were built in a boom cycle. Those aren't very well thought out homes and they will struggle to sell when the market goes the other way. And believe you me, the market will. So a smart buyer is going to look for features that will still be desirable in 10 to 20 years, like a coat closet next to the front door. A rule of thumb here, always ask yourself, if I had to sell this home in 5 years, or better yet, if I had to sell this home in a very difficult market in 5 years, would people want to buy it? Is this a good home outside of that? If the answer is yes, then it's a good decision. If there's any inkling that you might struggle when you sell, scrutinize the purchase in great detail. Okay, so let's recap. We've talked about understanding where you are within the market cycle, albeit it was brief, but enough to recognize that you should be looking as to where you fall here, or at the very least, have a conversation with a professional to help you understand where you are. 2, you must get pre-approved, and you might want to get pre-approved with multiple institutions. You might want to see who's going to offer you the best rate. Don't max yourself out. Give yourself some buffer. Buy responsibly and anticipate something going wrong in the future that you'll be able to deal with in this purchase. Think about your future life as well. What is life going to be like in 5 years? Am I going to have a kid? Will I have a dog? Am I going to be working from home? What does that look like? And consider those factors when you're buying. You're also going to want to count the true cost of ownership, weighing in appreciation against the cost of interest. Is it worth owning my home? Am I still tucking money away for my future self? Does this make sense? And finally, you want to buy with the resale conditions in mind. Did I buy a good floor plan? Was it well thought out? Was it built with good materials? Can I sell this in a difficult marketplace? If you can answer those questions, then chances are you're on the right path. Here's the truth, though. You can't control the market, but you can control how prepared you're going to be. You can control what you're going to look at. You can look at the indicators and you can make a better decision for yourself if you know these things. Being prepared financially, emotionally, and strategically makes all the difference between a home that feels like a burden and a home that sets you up for the future. Buying your home is the biggest financial decision you'll ever make. You should really treat it that way. I do with everyone that I help. It's important that you ask deeper questions, that you get a sound understanding of where you fit within the market. Don't just buy for today, buy for the person you'll be in the next 5 to 10 years. If this helped you, please hit subscribe or share it with a friend that you think will benefit from it. I post all the time and we have market updates all the time. It's important that you come and find out what those look like because, like I mentioned earlier, we're in a cycle. We're not in a static marketplace. Everything from interest rate changes to new housing policies are updated all the time, and that will change how you buy or what you buy. Certainly where you buy. So drop your questions in the comments and I'll make sure I address them. Because the more you understand, the better the decision you'll make. And that's what I want. Thanks for watching.